Solve the following inequalities, graph and write solutions in interval notation for each inequality. So today I'm going to be working on A, and then another video will be working on B. So let's get to inequality A here. So the first thing you want to do is you want to isolate the absolute value here. So the 7 is like in the way, so I'm going to subtract that to both sides. Again, I want to isolate the absolute value, which means we want the absolute value to be by itself. So subtract 7 from both sides, and then 7 minus 7 over here, that just cancels, goes away, and then 8 minus 7 on the right hand side of the inequality is just 1. And now that you have your absolute value isolated and you have the inequality with a number on the other side, what you want to do is use this idea. When you have an absolute value of stuff is less than a positive number, and this only works if it's a positive number, you turn this into a compound inequality. Stuff less than the positive number and stuff and the negative positive number is less than the stuff. So in our case, that would be 3x minus 1 is less than 1 and greater than negative 1. And again, this is what we call a compound inequality because it's two inequalities written like in one sentence in a sense. And technically speaking, it's two inequalities that we're looking at. We're looking at 3x minus 1 is less than 1 and 3x minus 1 is greater than negative 1, or minus 1 is less than 3x minus 1 if you prefer to look at it that way. So what this statement over here, the one that I just wrote a second ago, that combines both those inequalities. All right, so now what we're going to do, let's go back to the inequality at hand. I'm going to quote-unquote isolate the x. So I'm going to add 1 here to the middle, and I'm going to add 1 to the other sides of the inequalities. So it works a lot like an equation. So minus 1 and 1 here make 0. Minus 1 and 1 make 0, so you just have the 3x left in the middle, and 1 plus 1 is 2. And the next step here would be to, just like an equation, isolate x. I'm going to go ahead and divide by 3, and the other sides of the inequality would be divided by 3 as well. So 0 divided by 3 is 0. 3x over 3 is x, and 2/3 stays as it is. A little too squiggly there for the 3. There we go. And that would be our solution. The only thing you have to worry about when you're dividing or multiplying in that case is when you're dividing or multiplying by a negative. When you divide or multiply by a negative, it changes the inequality sign, so just be aware of that. All right, so our solution is all values of x for which are greater than 0 and for which are less than 2/3. And when I draw the graph for this, I'm going to put make a number line. I'll put, let's say, let's put 0 here, more in the middle. This is minus 1. 1 would be here. 2/3 would be between 0 and 1, so let's put that there. And the solution basically is all the stuff that's between 0 and 1. And I would put a couple open parentheses around that. And it's open parentheses because of the signs that you have here. We are not including the endpoints here. The 0 and the 2/3 is part of the solution. So you have this parenthesis instead of a bracket. If you had a little line under here, then you'd have a bracket, but we do not have that. Now, you could also, sometimes some books will do something along this line. No pun intended there. They'll make open circles around the 0 and 2/3, which is another way of saying not inclusive. However, I'm just going to stick with the parentheses here. And there we go. And again, if it was inclusive, you'd have a little bracket. All right, so that would be our graph. And then our interval notation, the way we write that is, you write this as left to right. I'm going to write 0 to 2/3 and put a parentheses around both. Okay, that's what interval notation is. So essentially it's like writing out the number line in terms of this notation. And when you're between like a couple numbers, it's fairly easy. You just write the two numbers that your solutions are between, and then you put a parentheses or a bracket accordingly to whatever you have in terms of the inequality. Okay. All right, well, thank you for your time.